Hey everybody, welcome back to What the Helvetica. In this week's episode, we have Destyn Patera from Lensea, which is a film videography company based in Pensacola, Florida. And we're gonna launch in and talk about his journey and storytelling and who knows where else we go with all of this.
Join Mike Janda and guests to discuss the things that make creative people say, what the hell, Helvetica.
All right, Destin, welcome to the show. So good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Just a shout out to V. So Veronique, we had on the show a month ago or so, a few weeks ago, and you did the awesome agency reel for her agency, which I loved. And I told her like way back when she first teased it, I think she sent me a link before it even went live. And I was like, oh my gosh, I always dreamt of having one of those. And then she told me about your agency and I've been excited to meet you ever since. So that's how you ended up here, because she said, oh, you really need to have Destin on. We just had him on our podcast and then here we are.
That's awesome. Yeah, huge fans of what they're doing over there. And V's always been a huge fan of you. I've heard your name come up a lot. And I know you participated in Design XL, which was a conference here years ago before I had moved back. Yeah. But yeah, super proud of that film for a whole gamut of reasons. We did just win a gold telly for the art direction, which is cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
And yeah, I mean, we try not to let awards be the metric of our success by any means, but it feels good to be recognized for something like that. And yeah, it's awesome. It's rare. And in my case, the only opportunity where we've had just kind of full trust from such a creative group of people to kind of just let us do what we thought was a good fit for what they were doing. And yeah, super proud of it. So thank you.
Yeah, no, it's so good. I ran my agency 13 years on my own, and then I sold, and then I was at the agency I sold to for a couple years. And I always wanted a sick trailer like that. And I never had one. We had a few that weren't sick like that. It was so good. It was so good.
No, I mean, I share the sentiment for sure. I mean, it's really hard to look inward and do stuff like that. And so props to the Hatchmark team for just fully trusting us in that process, and also just like making sure that their voice was heard. It's uncommon that you get, that much buy-in on a piece, but also just that much trust and yeah.
And shout out to all the clients that are listening. This is what happens when you let the creative team do their creative thing. Hire the right people and then let them do their magic, because you win gold tellies for that kind of stuff. And you get recognized inside of your industry. Like I recognize that thing, the top quality of it right out of the get-go. Anyway, okay, why don't you give us a little bit of your background, how you started getting into the film world, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up racing motocross most of my life, and that was really my life until I went to college and kind of phased out of that through the process of a few injuries. But I reference that because I think that a lot of my work ethic and stuff came from that world, and I think my desire to be creative as well. But yeah, and then went to school in Jacksonville at UNF, spent a lot of time thinking that I just wanted to run a business. Like that was kind of my goal for some reason. I'm really not sure where that desire came from, but always knew that I kind of wanted to do my own thing. I did SEO at a company for a long time, and then actually wasn't into film or photography at all at a young age. I had made a couple videos of my friends racing over the years, but never really, like, I didn't even own a camera for that long. Like when I had a camera, I remember my dad took it apart because we were trying to work on it, and it like never worked again. So I didn't touch a camera really until college, and I started traveling. And so I was traveling Europe and really wanted to document the travels. I felt a strong inspiration, as a young kid getting out of the country for the first time, like really just wanted to share that story with people, and started writing a blog. And then my dad had loaned me a photo camera, and I started taking pictures, and then the rest was history. I came back home Had a strong desire to go to Europe again. As soon as I graduated from college, I went back again for another 3 or 4 months. Participated in a GoPro contest, funny enough, and
Wow.
did really well in that, and stayed in Europe longer than I was supposed to, and lost my job at the SEO company, and came home, and just felt really inspired to continue to work within the realm of film. And I had a creative mentor in the early days, Ben Cooper. His musical name is Radical Face. Is a friend of mine in Jacksonville, a friend of a friend, actually a brother of one of my good friends, and he had really nice things to say about my filmmaking, there in Europe, and just to encourage me to like try that. And so I just kind of dove in from there, and that quickly became my avenue to like doing what I wanted to do in the beginning, which was like do my own thing. And here we are today, grown to a team of 8 people, and doing primarily commercial work these days. But that's kind of the inception story of how I got into film. Yeah.
So it wasn't like a movie buff turned filmmaker wanted to always do this kind of thing.
No,
Yeah.
and
That's
I'm
actually
quite
surprising, because I think a lot of people, that's their thing. They've just become passionate about movie cinematography, and then that's the drive for them.
certainly, and it's a running joke all the time about like when movies come up, they're like, oh, Destin hasn't seen that movie, because I grew up outside. I didn't even have cable as a kid. My parents weren't necessarily opposed to television or anything like that, but they had always encouraged us to be outside and to enjoy life in that way. But it's an unconditional or a untraditional, I guess, path into filmmaking. And for me, I think it was, I'm a really sensitive person. I'm a very introverted person. My mother always welcomed like me expressing my feelings, and I became passionate about people and about sharing stories and things of that nature. And film was just the medium in which I was able to do that effectively, and kind of how I fell into what I'm doing. And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay, so give me years on this. When was this first Europe trip? What years were that?
So I think the initial one was 2011, and then I went back in 2012. That's when I graduated from college. Came back without a job, put an ad on Craigslist, and basically said like, I have access to a camera and I'm interested in shooting commercial stuff, and had a startup company hire me, and was very thankful for that experience, and learned that I had no idea what I was doing. But and then just kind of snowballed from there. I started shooting music a lot. My original partner in this business, Austin, who lived with me at the time, was kind of phasing out of what he was doing, and I started to need more help, and he started going on the road with me. And then it was through the process of like trying to build a business that we realized, music is a tough thing, especially if you're not in, LA or New York. There's a very small sector of people that do like high-end music videos and stuff like that. And kind of reluctantly got into commercial work. I wasn't that excited about that at that time, but I realized through that process with that kind of fueled something that had existed within me for a long time, which was like wanting to start my own thing. And so this was my way of like helping businesses do their own thing. It was just really fulfilling, and quickly became, another facet of our passion within this process. And today I love shooting talking heads. I love talking to people. I love, exploring things that maybe in the earlier days weren't so visually exciting. And I didn't know that I would love, but it just kind of happened naturally, and I'm very grateful for it.
What do you think your percentage of entrepreneurship love versus the filmmaking love side? Because it sounds like you started your business because you wanted to do your own thing. You wanted to have a business, have that kind of freedom ability. And filmmaking was the way that you got there. Has the passion grown enough in the filmmaking side, or would you be just as content running a fencing?
Yeah, so I would say it's it started like 90-10, probably 90 on the entrepreneurial side. Like I wanted to do that. I know, I think intuitively wanted to communicate ideas. So, that's the 10% of the filmmaking side. I didn't really know filmmaking would be the way that I did that. But yeah, and I think that's just like that gap has started to close over time as you learn different strategies for making films. You get more into the aesthetics, you get more into the storytelling and all of that stuff. But yeah, I think it's just continued to become more about the filmmaking, largely because this process, I think, filled all the voids, and I always say voids. It filled all the needs within my life that were very much not voids. I grew up with a very privileged life with very great family members, and my mom and dad always, encouraged me to go out and explore things that interest me, and which I think was necessary. But through this process, have become more and more in tune with that side of myself, and just wanting to communicate with people, wanting to help share ideas, and wanting to help lift people up. I think has become more of like realizing that filmmaking is a great tool for that, has made me a better and better filmmaker over the years, a better and better communicator. But it's interesting, like I still don't have a strong desire to shoot like feature films or anything like that. I like commercial work. It's fun, it's exciting, it's different all the time. It's a huge, I don't want to just call it a struggle, but you got to work really hard to make it in this industry. And I enjoy that. I really like, challenging myself in that way and challenging my team in that way. And it also requires a group of people to do it effectively. And I've just been really, really fortunate to be linked up with some incredible people in the process that encourage me not only to be a better filmmaker, but to be a better human. And I'm so grateful for, this medium to satisfy those urges. But that's why it was funny, like you had mentioned in our sort of pre-interview about storytelling particularly. And, I that's all very intuitive for me. It's all about getting to know people and to, learning how to communicate with them. I think story is, you can break it down into a science. You can talk about, the various characters and the arc of the story and all that stuff, but it all doesn't really mean anything without understanding and like building relationships with people. And so for me, it's like always been about building long-term relationships, not just because it's good for business, but because it's good for me as a human being. I love connecting with people. I love helping them, accomplish whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish. And I think I'm super proud of like having a tool that can help them achieve that goal. And I get to do it with a bunch of people that I love and admire. And it's, what more could you ask for?
I'm built that exact same way. It was like all relationship first with my clients. We would talk about non-business stuff every bit as much as business stuff. Like I wanted them to be friends. And I'm a big fan of the relationship marketing strategy because I built my whole agency on that. So this meet people, get to know them, take a genuine interest in other people, and let opportunities become the byproduct of that. And it does. It comes out in referrals. It comes out in requests from those people that and your name starts to spread. Oh, you got to use Destin, his team, they're so good. That's how we're here, because of that relationship that you have with V and that relationship that I have with V. And now all of a sudden you and I are connected in this same way. I think it's so important in business.
For me, I think it's even more important in life. I've been like bouncing around this idea of being overly wrapped up in the work that I do. And I think constantly challenged by that, because, the general like idea is like, don't do that too much, because when that thing goes away, you lose your identity or whatever. And I've really come to believe that that's dialogue of people who hate their jobs. And I think, the unfortunate part of capitalism and the world we live in is that like a lot of people do hate their jobs. And I also, want to like follow up, like that's totally okay. I don't think you have to love your job or you have to wrap yourself up in your job. And I understand like there are a lot of potentially toxic ways about like that I've chosen to live my life and to wrap myself up in the work as much as I have. but it's really fulfilling. Like I really love this process of getting to know people, and I can take that with me wherever I go. You know, I say that all the time, like as we're talking about like the introduction of AI and what that means for film and whether or not we're concerned about that. And I just always tell everyone on the team, like, we're going to be okay because we built great relationships with people. Like these people would hire us to do just about anything. Like, and that's not necessarily the goal, is to like, you know, diversifying in that way, but it is the goal to build real relationships with people, because that is what I need in my life to be happy. And I think you looking at work as an opportunity to fulfill that need within your life is not so problematic if you can keep capitalism from putting too much pressure on you to grow your business or to, you know, make it all about the money or whatever. If I can keep it about the people, I think wrap myself up in it a way that it is something that I identify with, and recognize that if AI does come in and take all my job, what I've built in the process is the capacity to communicate ideas, and there are numerous ways to do that, you know, and that's why I admire the branding process so much, and so curious about your past and the things that you've done through, you know, just mutual admiration of people through folks like V who do that so effectively. I often say, like, everything I've learned about this business comes from branding. It is just a facet of that process, and our work is only reinforced by the branding process. And it's just so interesting to ask people to look back in at what they're doing and try to build strategies around like how to communicate that and how to elevate that, and also just encourage them to recognize that what they're doing is important in the world. In most cases, not in all cases, of course, but it's just about the people, man. It is very much about like having a big group of friends that I am just thankful to get to work with and for.
Yeah. It's so great. It's the mindset that I'm going to build a relationship with this person. They're going to build a relationship with me. And whether work ever comes out of it for me or them or whatever doesn't matter, because my life is already richer with a new person in it. And I have that mindset too. It's just where do we calculate wealth in society? And so many of us calculate it based on how much money you make or have. That's the wealth metric in a capitalistic society. The real wealth how many people show up at your funeral with tears in their eyes because you touched their life? Man, that's a metric that if more people in the world spent their energy trying to gain that kind of wealth, how much better would everything be?
Absolutely. And I think that's really like my MO is trying to make sure that stays at the forefront of the decisions that we're making. And I mean, it's unfortunately a privilege to even have the opportunity to think that way. You know, a lot of people don't get the chance in their life to, you know, do something that they love because of the pressures of society, the way they're born, where they're born, you know, there's just so many factors that is like, I'm just incredibly lucky. I'm one of the lucky few. You're one of the lucky few. But given the opportunity, if it presents itself, I'd encourage people to take it. And I'd encourage people to regardless of the outcome, try to build a great relationship, try to communicate your ideas, and try to just give like positive energy into the world, because it will give it back in some way, even if it's just like I have a new friend that I can call when you know this doesn't work out for me or whatever. But it's funny that you bring that up. I was just this morning reviewing a project with a long-term client of ours. It's a retainer client that we've been with for about 3 years. And she was like talking about a podcast that I was on a few weeks ago, and was like, so I simultaneously, for context of the story, and also something I'm very proud of, we got to work on the IMAX documentary for the Blue Angels.
You did?
Yeah. So
I saw that. It's so sick. It's on Amazon Prime right now, right?
Yeah. And it was in IMAX for a week. Yeah. And Amazon bought it. So after a week, it went to Amazon. And so we got to be like super involved in that process. You know, the Blue Angels are here in Pensacola. The producer came to town. Yeah, it was a whole cool thing. But And I loved it. I don't mean to discount that process by what I'm about to say at all, because that was just incredible. It was a really cool project. But this other client of ours was like, you said our name twice, but in a Perdido Beach Resort is that client. Shout out to PBR. You said our name twice before you even talked about the Blue Angels. And I was like, well, that's because this work is so much more meaningful. Like it's, you know, the scale of it is entirely different, but the fact that like we get to work with you guys and intimately understand what your needs are and get to know your team and include them in the process and like all the back, like this is what we're here for. And we get to do it with you every single month. You know, that project is gone and may never happen again. I mean, for those that are curious, never met J.J. Abrams or Glenn Powell or any of the people that, you know, were slated with that film. And, you know, we're the creators of that film. They are executive producers. They funded it and came up with everything. They made it happen. But it is like the real relationships. I mean, more than the IMAX documentary, it's the producer that we built a relationship with, the director. Like all of these people are the things that I'm most proud of. And, you know, the director of that film was like calling our name out in a lot of press releases and stuff. And that just, you know, the fact that I was able to build that relationship with them, and not just me, my entire team, arguably more of my team than myself, was able to build that relationship is the thing that is most meaningful to me. And the thing I think for most people would be the takeaway, you know, is that like, oh, I have a new friend in this world who appreciates the work that I'm doing. And it feels good, you know, and I don't discount that feeling as a part of our success. You know, that's a huge success in my book. The reality of what we do is it's really expensive and to do it effectively. And the process of understanding those costs and like scoping projects and all that is like incredibly stressful and difficult. But it's tough to do. So like you have to find something else to be like excited about, I think, in a way. But it's the same for the branding process. You know, it can be really difficult to articulate what it is that you're doing. And it's to do it well, it costs real money, you know, and that's the unfortunate part of what we do is we have to communicate that and you know, negotiate those proposals and all that stuff. And it's like, I'd really just want to do the work and make a bunch of friends in the process, you know?
Yeah. And then if it covers the costs of my life and a little bit of profit, then great. Then I am winning everywhere that I look.
Yeah. So I generally have this thought that, you know, focusing my attention on the people and the money will work itself out. Do you agree with that? Or do you think,
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. That's been my whole mission. In fact, when I get scared about my business, it's when I lose sight of that and I start looking at the numbers too much, because then I'm like, oh no, I got payroll coming or whatever. You start getting hyper focused on that and fear can set in. If you just go people first and trust that the more people that you impact in the world from a personal relationship standpoint, the more that's going to come back to you, the karma mindset. I totally believe in that. And I've never had that not work for me. There've been plenty of scary moments, those moments when you're like, oh no, am I ever going to get another project again? Those kinds of things. That happens to everybody in this space. But I always got another project. It always worked itself out because I never did I worked so hard to always be good to work with, to not overcharge my clients, to give them value for what they were buying from me, to do it with integrity, to fulfill whatever we promised we were going to do, we fulfill it, to build those personal relationships outside of just the business transaction, and then just go on the trust, the karma trust, that it's all going to work out for you too, because you're blessing the lives of other people and that's going to come back to you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Always go with that mindset. Yeah.
For sure. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you mentioned something when you're talking about, we were talking about happiness or something and or wealth being in relationships. And I started thinking, I've been in most continents on the planet and spent a lot of time. And I think of South America as an example, lower income areas in South America. And some of the people that I know that live in places like that are so happy because their entire wealth in their life is the relationships that they have. They've got grandma who's living with them. They've got aunts and uncles living with them. All their cousins are all nearby, and they have this whole infrastructure of relationships, and they find so much joy and happiness in there. Because the capitalistic entrepreneurial money grab is not impacting their day-to-day life. And I think in places like we live, where we've been privileged in that respect, it's easy for people to lose sight of the real value in what your life is about, and it isn't stacking up as much money as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I had firsthand experience to some of that. I was a part of a company that grew pretty fast when I was doing SEO stuff, as a company that sold industrial supplies. And as the company scaled, like the culture, started to shift and get lost in a lot of cases. And I think that inevitably happens. And I came across a book about a year and a half ago, which has just become like my Bible, quite honestly. It's called Small Giants, and it's a company that chooses to be great. Yeah, companies that choose to be great.
I have that book in my closet back there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Such a cool thing for me. I think it's interesting, like, as you develop these ideas more intuitively and you don't really have any like basis to validate them, I guess, in your process. Sorry about the ambulance there.
It's all right. As long as they're not coming to you, then we should be able to finish our conversation.
I don't think so. But I think, in the process of like exploration, it's easy to be self-critical, and I found myself I guess expressing this idea that like it wasn't really about the money for me, and it was, and all this, but like, I've got payroll and I've got bills, and like as that stuff comes along, you do find yourself focusing on some attention on that, and it does stress you out. And I've got a lot of gray hair up here. It's a tough job for sure. And I found myself at certain points in the process questioning whether or not I was just like making up that reality, or if that was really the case for me. Was I really practicing what I was preaching? And Small Giants was such a great like revelation for me to realize that like there are companies out there that are doing that at various scales. And the reason you don't hear about them is because they're not the conventional version of success that capitalism wants to celebrate. And so you don't hear about them. And it's almost like on purpose that they don't talk about themselves, because it is not like their core priority about, regarding what they do. It is about the people. It's about their staff. It's about their community. It's all of this stuff that is really hard to quantify, or, the local newspaper doesn't want to come and write an article about. Because it's so personal. It's so like, it's not necessarily that easy to communicate. And it's also like, if you don't feel it, you don't really know what I'm feeling. Like I can tell you about it all day. But Small Giants was just one of those things that was like, oh, these companies do exist. And there is a path forward to not think about growth in the capacity of like increased revenue or a bigger team or whatever. And our revenue has grown, our team has grown, all of that stuff. But throughout that process, we've been able to really focus our attention on just making sure that we're having fun, that we're communicating ideas that we believe in, and we're getting to work for people. In most cases, there are some cases where we're doing things that maybe we're not as excited about, but for the most part, we have found ourselves in a position where we get to work for like companies that really do prioritize humanity in a big way. And whether that be like through a resort who's like has like such a great reputation of like their staff staying with them, but also like when people come to their resort, they remember the people way more than they remember the experience. I'm just so thankful that like, I guess following that intuition for me did put me in a position where I am getting to work for organizations that are doing the same thing. And you can do it. Like it is a real possibility for you in building a business that you can find yourself in a position where you are not only enriching your own life, but the lives of others through the process of the craft that you do. And I think when you find yourself there, one, you'll be really happy and fulfilled with the work that you do. And the jury's still out as to whether or not that lasts. I don't know. I'm our company actually started in 2018. I've been doing the work since 2012, but like whether or not that sustains me is TBD. It seems like it's done a great thing for you. But two, it will, the money will work itself out, like you will have these lasting relationships that aren't necessarily dependent on you doing a great job as much as they are dependent on you doing your job with integrity and trusting people and understanding and really like putting the work in, which is just, it's way more rewarding than any paycheck ever will be in my mind.
Yeah. You know what? This is a pessimistic perspective in the future, but
I'm great at being a pessimist.
I know. I can get some sense of who you are here. What I know won't last is the currencies and the economic exchange and stuff that we currently live on today is not what it's going to be at some point in the future. We already have the crypto boom happening and the push to digital currencies and things and Bitcoin and the disruption there. Something's going to happen in that world. And so if our focus is on the money, I've got to be part of that churn, that economic churn. When does that end? Like what is the catalyst to the implosion of that? Well, whatever happens, if I have 100 close friends because I spent my time building relationships, then even in the future society, if we're going totally post-apocalyptic perspective, even in that future society, I still have all my wealth in those relationships, independent of what these economies end up having happen. So I just love this perspective. And we don't have to go to religious perspectives and things, but I believe that this isn't the end, and we die and turn to dust. I believe in something that comes next, and that the relationships that we build now will be able to continue on. And that's an optimistic and faith-filled perspective, but it's one that makes me happy today. I know what won't go is the money I make. That won't go with me wherever I go next. That part won't. So
I think that there's things asked,
like that.
Asked my religious friends if they thought the money was going to go with them. I never really considered that. But no,
the money's not. I can promise. No, none of them will say that the money's going anywhere.
Yeah, there is no currency in the afterlife, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with that, and I think religion aside, if you do believe that you leave this earth and there's not any continued version of life for you, the experiences that you have shared with other people will continue to exist on this planet. The vibrations that you've shared with people that you love, they will take that energy and extend it out to other people. And I'm not particularly religious. I would say I'm some version of spiritual, but like I believe that to be true. Like, and I also believe that like the curious part, or the curious side of me is like just constantly wondering, like, how can I be a better version of myself? Like, how can I better communicate that I admire and appreciate someone? And that stuff feels good. And they take that energy and they share it with other people. Like, regardless of what you believe about the afterlife, there's a lot of reasons to put some emphasis on how you treat people and how you give to people. And, I mean, how you're received is a difficult thing to control, but you can always control how you're giving and what your intentions are. I also believe like if you have good intentions, you will be fulfilled in life in some way, even if you get it wrong. It's good to know that you tried, and inevitably you will get it wrong. Not just with work, but with people, and to know that you had good intentions is a good thing. And that requires practice, I think, to be intentional about every decision that you make. You have to make space and time for that. And I mean, we're getting deeply philosophical, but that's very much where I live relative to the business. We do huddles on Tuesday is like the only day that our core team like actually gets together as a group. And I used to be really critical of the fact that like we don't do much on Tuesdays. Like it's almost like Tuesday's a wash a lot of times. Like we have to like plan to get work done, otherwise we won't, because we'll just hang out and talk and like, you know, vent about the last project or talk about what we're excited about, next cool new film or whatever. And yeah, I think that stuff is really important within the workplace and outside the workplace. And I think, you know, you can combine those two worlds if you do practice in being intentional and being kind and having integrity. And, you know, I don't think it's so problematic to mesh the two worlds. But with your experience, I want to pose that question. Do you think it's problematic to wrap yourself up in the work that you're doing?
Problematic to get so hyper focused on the work?
Well,
what do you mean?
To identify by the work, I guess. And I've heard versions of this that do make a lot of sense to me. One of which is like, if I wrap myself up into the work too much and it requires some physical component of my body that I, you know, get injured and I can't do anymore. And like, then you lose that part of your identity. But I don't know. I'm pretty critical of that mindset, but I think generally speaking, you know, the sentiment of like you work too much, or, you know, I was talking to someone the other day that asked me about my personal life, and I talked about work, and they criticized that. They were like, "Hey, I asked you about your personal life, and all you talked about was, you know, things that you're working on." And I was like, "Well, that is my personal life, you know." And I think, it's necessary to have both. But the question being, like, do you think it's problematic to identify too much with the work, I guess?
It's so hard to not, when you own an agency. You have 8 employees right now, or a team of 8 right now. And that, for me, was kind of the time when this is a real business now. It's not like me and some sidekicks. This is like a real business with real cash flow need and churn. I have to be doing sales to continue to generate opportunities. I have to run my business. I can't just be like writing checks under the table to my employees anymore. I need to be running things through payroll and doing my accounting and businesses, taxes, and all the stuff. It's so hard at your business size and bigger to not get lost in the minutia of it and become so synonymous with the business and you, who your identity is. It's so hard. And I think I lost that in a few eras of my business. I lost who I really was, because when my overhead got to the 150 grand, 200 grand a month in overhead just to keep things churning, there's a lot of stress that comes with that, and a lot of pressure to keep it churning, because you have all of these people that you're supporting, and their kids and their spouse and whoever else is their support structure, relying on the income that your business provides. It's hard. I had trouble. I had trouble in that era. I think I lost some of who I really am in the inside. As a result, I got more stressed than what I am comfortable being. I started having trouble sleeping, which I never had that problem before, but it was the stress and pressure. You see it affect people. You see it. I mean, watch every documentary about an entrepreneur, from a Steve Jobs to like the Social Network, and how they transformed Mark Zuckerberg throughout that movie and what he became at the end, and the deals that he did and things to screw people over and stuff. It's hard for people to not become that. I think the bigger you get, the easier it is to slip into becoming the entrepreneur schmuck that you never wanted to become.
Yeah. I think I agree with you completely, and I mean, it certainly is a challenge, but I guess for me, it's like, I'm curious if it's a necessary challenge for me. I'm curious if, and necessary is a weird word to use there, but if, you know, through that challenge, I will grow and I will deeper define who it is and what I want to be on this planet. I think those challenges can really push me to like, you know, and that's how I function. Like I like to be, you know, right at the edge of the in the deepest part of the hole, if you will. Like I love to dig myself out, and I love to challenge other people to be better versions of themselves. And that's just through my own experience. And my team does that for me all the time, continues to challenge me to be a better version of myself. But I'm constantly asking myself, like, what is that threshold that makes sense to challenge myself to like grow beyond that? And I think, I don't discount the potential toxicity of that mindset. I think you have to be careful with that for sure. And I a little maybe TMI here, but my therapist had always said to me like this sort of mantra that would help me understand if I had reached a threshold, because I have the capacity to be a little manic, and on the back end of a manic episode, I'll be a little distraught for a little while, but I kind of enjoy that cycle and that process within my life. And again, I understand that could get to a point where I, you know, need to explore maybe not doing that. But she always said like, are you eating, sleeping, and being good to the people around you? And if you can ask yourself those questions and you're doing those things, just keep on going, you know, just like keep on, you know, if you really do enjoy that process of self-exploration and challenging yourself to stay true to who you are and what you want to do and how you want to participate in the world, just ask, are you eating, are you sleeping, are you being good to the people around you? And if you can say yes to all of those questions, you're okay. Like keep going. Just, you know, don't cancel your therapy appointments maybe. But
I go to therapy every week.
Yeah.
So it's a standing Wednesday appointment. So I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I moved. Mine was Wednesday, but it's now Sunday. But I think that's what I'm here for. You know, is like really just to challenge myself. Like how far can I go? And I have to be really careful about, you know, having a team of people that maybe don't have that mindset or don't need that in their life. And I don't mean to say that I'm like creating that reality for other people, but I do want to challenge people. I do want to put people in positions to make, you know, decisions and grow from them as well. And it doesn't mean they have to identify with the work the same way I do, but it does make me feel good to challenge someone to grow within themselves and for them to reap the benefits of that. Potentially. I think there's an interesting thing in being a small business and being able to choose what you want it to be versus being a big business or a publicly traded business where you have to grow the business. That's the whole mission. You have people that are investing in the business, expecting a return on their investment, and that return comes in the stock price going up, which the stock price goes up when the revenue and profitability gets bigger in the business. The scale becomes bigger. And there's somewhere in between where you are and where those businesses get, where you can still choose. You can choose, what do I want this business to be? And maybe it is a team of 8 doing commercial film work, and you're not going to make your feature film. You're not going to make your feature length documentary yourself, that dream project. You're not going to scale to a team of 50. And then you have to become a little bit more shrewd of a CEO of this business. And you have to run it like a business because the demands of the business are so high. You really have a luxury in your current state of business to say to yourself, this is what I want. I want it to be this. I want to make sure that I keep relationship founded. I don't care this year if I make 50% more than last year. If I grow, great. If I don't grow and we're roughly the same, then I enjoyed that last year too. My team is still healthy and they're all employed and the business is still cash flowing. You can pick and choose. I think people get caught up into the mindset that, oh, if you have a business, the business's job is to grow and scale. You got to grow and scale the business. And I don't think that's true for everybody.
No, absolutely not. And I think referencing Small Giants, there's a great story in there about the guy. It's been a while since I've read it, but Cliff Bar, I think the company of him like almost going public, and then like, you know, just taking this huge risk just to keep the culture of the company alive. Yeah, I mean, I think society in general likes to put that pressure on people. I think we often like to try and convince people that that's the only path forward, that you have to grow, that you have to have this mindset of like bigger and better every time. And yeah, I mean, I don't really know how to break that mold, and I obviously am guilty of that in a lot of ways. Like I definitely want to, you know, feel good about growth and want to make more money. I more than anything, I want my team to make more money and to have, you know, more support and resources for their lives. And yeah, I think the unfortunate part of capitalism is that it just breeds that kind of culture. Yeah. But I also think it does provide a really great opportunity for people like us. And in this case, as I'm getting to know you, it's very clear that we share some ideas in that space. In that you find other people out there that are doing the same thing. You find other companies who do value relationships, and they also find their way through that process to customers who share those values. And I think if we are to, you know, I don't discount the fact that capitalism is messed up in so many ways, and I wish there was you know, different facets of our system. But I think the reality of that is it creates these opportunities for people who are willing to, you know, take those risks in, you know, focusing on people and the well-being of, you know, not only your staff, but your clients and their clients, and making sure that what you're communicating is sincere. I mean, yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've been wrapped up in a project where I'm just like, is this really achieving the goal, or is this just helping you like make the money? Like, and the latter is soul sucking, you know, and it often nets you the better return. But like, we are then being given an opportunity to build relationships with these other businesses who share that sentiment, and in some cases teach businesses that, like, that, you know, that other businesses out there are like that, or to help them go through that self-reflection process of realizing that, like, hey, it's really not about the money, it's about making this thing. Like, I mean, even if it's like doing woodwork or whatever, it's like, it's about, like, when I give this to someone, the look on their face. And like, fortunately, I've been able to like increase the price to make it equitable so that I can live the lifestyle that I want to live. But yeah, I see it as a huge opportunity. It's a huge challenge as well, but it's a great way to differentiate yourself in the sea of creators, or, you know, video production companies or whatever. But it requires, you know, you have to have the privilege of being selective, and that is not something that everyone gets to choose, and it's not something that I always get to choose. I mean, sometimes there's stuff that comes along that we just have to do. And you know, there's another filmmaker that I admire that he says one for the meal and one for the reel. And it's like there's always one that's paying the bills, and then, you know, it allows you to go out and do this other one that fuels your soul and is something that you're excited about and you can use to get more work like that. And it's a delicate dance between, you know, paying our bills and staying happy and building, you know, meaningful relationships. But I do think, like, you know, we were talking about storytelling in the beginning. I do think storytelling happens naturally there. Like, it's if you like meet a client, get to know them, do a lot of like deep diving on them and learn their story, it's almost impossible for you not to tell it through the craft, you know. Story structure aside, like, if you are proud to be a part of what these people are doing, you will inevitably lift up those core values through the process of creation, right? Regardless of what it is that you're doing or what you're creating for them. And it's just always going to be meaningful. It's always going to be fun. And the challenge of running the business is just always going to be what it is, right? It's a difficult thing, and competition is hard. And you know, positioning yourself as the premier option and like sustaining a life within that requires a lot of marketing and practice and relationship building and,
Yeah.
all of that stuff. So it's a balance of all of those things. But I do think storytelling happens naturally. I do think, humans have been communicating via story for, hundreds of thousands of years. Like it is such a big part of our DNA and who we are. And I'm not saying you can't like learn about structure and learn about character development and that improve your ability to do so. But more than anything, I think, learning about why those stories exist and why they're important, why they, just feeling that stuff is going to educate you more than anything else within the process, for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. I was thinking of a story when we were talking about the privilege of kind of choosing how your business is and getting sucked into the growth of your business and things. And I thought of this, I had this miserable year in my agency, and it was probably when I had, 6, 7, maybe 8 employees. And all of a sudden I had delegated off all of the fun stuff. I was now just doing the crap. I was like dealing with the frustrated employee, dealing with the frustrated client, doing the accounting related stuff. The fun work that I used to get to do was now being delegated out. And the fun work that we were doing was no value to the world at all. ABC and Disney and ABC Family and Warner Brothers were my early clients, and they were giving us projects. And we had this Desperate Housewives quiz, this personality quiz. And it was hugely successful. Like 3 million people took the quiz, the first thing to figure out which of the housewives they were most like or which one they would be most compatible with or whatever. So they launched this game that we made. And I was like, man, I'm so glad it was such a huge success, but we're like contributing to the decline in society. Like we're just giving just crap out there. This has no value to anyone. And what I'm doing in my business is the worst of the work. And I had this whole year that I spent just really struggling with what is my whole purpose here, because the work we were doing was just casual games. And my job in the business wasn't even fun for me anymore. And then we had our first company party at the local amusement park where we invited all of the employees and their spouse and their kids or their +1, whoever they wanted to bring. And we all got t-shirts, company t-shirts and stuff. And we did a catered lunch at one of the pavilions. And I remember all the people walking at like noon, walking up to the pavilion, and they're pushing strollers and they got all their shirts on and everybody's happy and they all were in the park and we paid for everything from the agency. And then I had this blink moment where I was like, oh, now I get it. What I'm doing as a business owner is providing opportunities for all of these people. It's providing jobs for them. It's providing food for all of their kids. That allows their kids to get educated. It allows them to build their portfolio. My team members were building their portfolio with cool projects that is going to help them scale in their career. So I started to have this big understanding of the real value that I was doing as a business owner. And it wasn't the work. It wasn't even the client relationships. Some of the biggest, most valuable stuff was the opportunity that I had the privilege of providing to the team members that were part of it. And you look at this for your team, I assume that on their own, in their current state of their business, they probably wouldn't have been able to land the Blue Angels documentary job. That got sent to your agency because of your agency that you built. And all of those people got to touch that project because of that opportunity that you were able to kind of mediate for them. And if you start looking at business that way and say, okay, what are the lives I'm really touching here? And the first one that's being impacted is your own. And then it's your team that you spend all those hours with. And you're impacting those people for the better, which has that ongoing effect that you mentioned earlier too. It impacts their kids and will impact their kids. And you're leaving this little nudge in the universe that's going to cascade down for who knows how long.
Yeah, that's awesome. What did what did that realization do for you? Like, I'm curious if it like shifted the type of work that you were getting in the future, or was it just like, you just had this realization and it just like shifted the way you were thinking you could be happy about it? Or
I got happy again. I got happy. All of a sudden I wasn't miserable anymore because I understood the bigger picture of what I was doing. And it wasn't cranking out games for Desperate Housewives. It wasn't marketing these shows that were just, clickbait shows. It wasn't that. And in the early days, and in the early days of anything that we're doing, it's easy to get caught up in the work and say, oh, the work, I'm so happy about the Gold Telly or the Webby Award or the whatever you're doing, or I got to work for this brand. Look at the thing I designed. And in the later years, when you run an agency, the thing you're really creating isn't the work, it's the business itself. And that business has a culture, and that business has a legacy, and that business has a brand and a vibe, and you're building that whole entity. That's the greatest creative project of all time, is building a business, brand, culture, processes, all the stuff. It's so fun when you look at it as a creative project. And I think that was the big epiphany that I had that started to shift the way I operated in my business too, which made ultimately the business more successful too, because I was focused on what mattered most. And it was creating the culture and creating the relationships and creating the brand and creating the memorableness of the agency itself, building the trust level in the eyes of the client. That's the stuff. That's the high level picture stuff.
Yeah, the stuff that's really hard to articulate. But yeah, I mean, I think that was the core of my question, was what you said there at the end, was that it shifted the work that you got in some ways because the way that you thought about it. And I think that's really the mystery of the process of like, whether you're just, regardless of what you're doing, like finding some way to love a part of the process. And if you can't, like, see if you can find a way for someone else to do it. And hopefully it's someone that they love that part of the process, or it's somebody that views it as a means to an end. Like they just, they're happy to do your accounting because they're, living their life elsewhere or whatever. I mean, I get some people love accounting. I still can't make sense of it, but
some people do. Yeah. I know those people.
But yeah, I love those people. Yeah. They're awesome.
They are. We need those people. We need them.
Absolutely. Yeah. But the core message there of like just trying to find some way to love what it is that you're doing, because I think, one, if you get a chance to try and start your own business, it is a huge privilege, and regardless of the success of it. And I'm a mentor in like a small business development group in town, and we're like a group of mentors, and I'm the lead on this team. And one of the guys that had expressed like, don't get wrapped up in the work too much. And my response to this guy was, because I think he runs a food, something in food and beverage, and a restaurant. And he is so like wrapped up in being a great manager. And my response to that was like, I think you can wrap yourself up in the work. Don't wrap yourself up in like this individual business, but wrap yourself up in being a great manager, a great people to a great person to other people. Like that you can carry with you wherever you go. And I think that's just one of those things to kind of shift that perspective. And I mean, I don't discount that things are hard and that people might find themselves in positions where they can't find happiness, or it genuinely isn't something that they like to do. That is inevitably going to, happen to some of us at some point in our lives. But sometimes it is as simple as like shifting your perspective and just realizing that like, wait, I don't have to do this. I get to do this. Like I don't, I'm not really spending so much of my energy and time on appreciating the fact that, and that's what it is for me. Like, and that's why I tell everyone, like, if I get young filmmakers like asking me about pricing and stuff like that, it's like, how do you sell things confidently? And I was like, well, the moment I started working with people that were, one, way better than me, but two, that I admired and wanted success for, it's so easy to tell people that costs money. Like, I have no issue like putting a number around, the work that they're doing. It's really incredible. So if you're super self-critical, that's one way to get confident about your building. But I think that is an example of what I'm talking about in that perspective of like, you know, hell yeah, I'll go to the table and fight for these people. I love them. They're good people. They deserve nothing but good things. And I have no issue, you know, getting out there and trying to find work for them. It makes me really proud to do the work. And it feels so much better when it works, to make it about, you know, lifting other people up that I admire and love. And simultaneously, it's a lot easier to do it for them than it is for myself. But it's interesting. And I would love to, you know, deepen our conversation on that someday. I think I'm curious. You said that you found yourself in this position where you were doing the not fun part of the work.
Yeah.
Did you find a way out of that, or was it just a shift in that perspective that helped you, you know, like, or I mean, did you from that point until selling your business continue not doing the fun parts of work, or did you find ways to reintroduce yourself into that process? And
it was all paradigm shifts. And what I realized is that my creative project was no longer the work we were doing for clients. My creative project was the work I was doing for my own business. I wasn't going to help my clients. My team was doing the client work. I was doing that work for my agency. So I was figuring out our branding. I would design, just to get it out of my system, I would design our marketing collateral. I redesign our proposals. I redesigned my proposal template. I would make the prettiest freaking spreadsheets you've ever seen, colors and code and all fancied up for a spreadsheet, because for me, it was creative outlet. It was a way to scratch that itch that's inside me of creating something. And I was no longer creating for my clients. So I did figure out that paradigm. One of my most favorite creative projects, and V and I talked about this on our episode, was designing the freaking studio space. And I think she would say the exact same thing. That whole entire three-dimensional space is a manifestation of her creativity and what's on the inside of her. And designing that down to the muralists that she hired for certain things, it all came out of vision that she had for these things. It's so fun. And when you have things like that, it helps you get through the minutia of going to the tax planning meeting with your accountant, or talking a bad client or a mad client off the ledge when they're so mad about something that happened in the project, or talking to an employee who's all frustrated about something, or firing somebody who unfortunately you have to fire because of whatever reason. That's the stuff that sucks. But I got through all of those kinds of experiences because I found what I loved so much. And it was creating the business. I was still a creator. Yeah. And I think that that's what's so fun about entrepreneurship, when you have that privilege. You mentioned the word privilege. It was a privilege for me to build a business. I do it now. Like, I spun up this podcast. I designed all the stuff for this podcast. I did cut the little intro and stuff. I edit these things because I freaking love doing it. And so I'm scratching all those itches and still creating. Now I just get to create for my own self as the client instead of creating for somebody who is paying me money.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, congratulations. It's awesome not to just shift that perspective, but to find other ways to express those feelings and express that desire to create and design. And funny. You mentioned the space and the video. I don't know if she told you, but the video was actually done when she bought the building. We said, well, here's the canvas to like do this. So it was like this dilapidated thing that we just painted the walls black and built the thing in there. So I think that's like got a really cool back.
It's so sick. It's like, it becomes the ultimate before video, the before and after version. Yeah. It's awesome.
It makes it so much more meaningful for them, I think, in a big way. Like their desks are literally right next to that like shrine that they built in that video, and that process could have only been realized through the process of filmmaking, which is really cool. And I'm super grateful for that experience. And
yeah.
I think it's definitely an interesting struggle that I think everyone will find themselves in that rut, you know, trying to figure out like, or realizing that, hey, the business now needs this, and I can't seem to find joy in doing it. And I think, you know, there's a variety of different ways you could advise people to take next steps. I mean, if they have the money to hire someone else to do it, great, you know, whatever. But I think the process of recognizing that like you're steering the ship through relationship building and ensuring that every move that your team member makes is like rooted in a core intention to like be good to other people and stuff like that is like far more important than the work itself. And I think it is a way to contextualize and reframe the struggle of not being able to do the fun stuff anymore. And that I asked that question, I mean, because that's becoming more and more of a reality for me. And
I'm sure.
I
know your phase. You're right on the cusp.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been fun though. And it's, I'm just so incredibly grateful that I mean, it's not just because I love them. I really have just been lucked out with getting to work with a group of people who are really, really great friends and just people that I admire, you know, so deeply and just want to be more like every day. And so I'm excited to come to work, and I'm excited to do the taxes, even if I'm, you know, complaining about it a little bit or something. I'm excited to do whatever I can to keep it going and to, you know, keep these people creating and to keep being inspired by them, you know. I'm just so grateful for it. Yeah.
It's awesome. I have no doubt that they're grateful for you also, and for being the kind of boss that you are. This conversation was nothing like what we had planned. We planned to talk about storytelling and some of the biggest client things and the big things. But I loved this, and this is what I want this podcast to be. It's kind of this stuff that nobody's really talking about, these internal struggles that we have as entrepreneurs. And so I'm glad that this conversation went where it went, Destin.
Well,
thank you.
And I'm so grateful for you inviting me on and for getting to know you and learn a little bit about your story. And I've heard your name a lot in various circles here in Pensacola, because you were a hit at Design XL, I hear.
All the people are so great.
It really is such a unique community. It's such a cool thing.
It's so good.
I think, you know, wrapping up the philosophical like stuff that we've been discussing in the process of like maybe trying to advise, I noticed through your questions that maybe there was like some element of hoping that this is helpful for other people. And I also, you know, you've taken on mentoring. That's obviously a big part of your identity nowadays. But I think more than anything, people need to recognize that like tools, opportunities, things that are being, you know, given to you and are readily available to everyone else, are not always going to be the things that like help you push forward. I think it is all about human relationships. I think even all the way down to like where you want to live. Like I moved back to Pensacola with every intention of going out west, and I met a group of people that I loved, and I've been happy, you know, with that decision ever since. And so I'd encourage anyone like that's setting out to either build their own thing or, you know, have a career in a creative space to just try and continue to prioritize people and the relationships that you're building with them, and the rest will work itself out. You know, just try to be intentional about the decisions that you're making and challenge yourself to be a better version of yourself every day, and in the way that you know, spread kindness and love to other people. And the rest of the stuff will work itself out. You don't have to be the best at what you're doing. I've worked with tons of production companies that, to be quite frank, are very bad at their jobs, but seem to do well because they manage the relationships well. And whether or not they're doing well is subjective. I mean, I guess it's a little bit of a, who am I to say whether or not their work is great? But I tell my team all the time to just like, we're at least decent at what we do. Now we just have to be good to the people around us, you know? But I think also being a production company in a small market and experiencing the success that we have in, you know, things like being looked at as like the core support team for a project like the Blue Angels, something at that scale with director and DP and like all these folks who have like had so much more exposure to tools and experiences and stuff, to lean on us so heavily is a testament to that reality, and that like you just got to be good to the people around you and be try to be fun to be around, and try to enjoy your life a little bit, enjoy work a little bit, and you'll find success in some way for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Super good closing thoughts. Thank you. It's been so fun chatting with you. Where can
Likewise.
people find you, Destin?
On Instagram, our website. I don't really use Facebook so much, definitely not as much as I should, but email me anytime, lenseafilm.com or lenseafilm on Instagram. Reach out if you have any questions. I love talking to people. I love being a part of these conversations, and I probably learn and grow more from them than the people who are reaching out about them. So happy to talk anytime. And look forward to doing it again with you someday, and watching your podcast grow. Thanks again for having me.
Awesome. Thank you. And thanks everybody for listening to this episode of What the Helvetica. If you like this podcast, please drop a comment on the YouTube version of this conversation, or leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. It helps this podcast get to new people, which is always great to help share some of the knowledge and wealth of all these great people that we have on the show. Thank you, Destin, for coming, and we'll see everybody next time.
Thank you.